Once again, a warm welcome to you. U.S. President Joe Biden has signaled that his goal is to see the truce between Hamas and Israel extended beyond today, which would mark the end of the initial four-day pause agreed by both sides. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has indicated that an extension would be accepted if Hamas continued to release 10 hostages per day for each additional day of pause. This as the United Nations Secretary General called for the dialogue that led to the four-day pause to continue, resulting in a full humanitarian ceasefire for the benefit of the people of Gaza.
That's our goal, to keep this pause going beyond tomorrow so that we can continue to see more hostages come out and surge more humanitarian relief into those who are in need in Gaza.
That says it's possible to free 10 more hostages for every additional day of pause. This is welcome. In the same breath, I also said to the president that at the end of the outline, we will return with full force to achieve our goals: the elimination of Hamas, ensuring Gaza does not return to what it was, and, of course, the release of all of our hostages.
Todos están trabajando.
Everyone is working. The Qataris, the Egyptians, the United States, the European Union, Spain, Palestine. We are all working to extend this truce by 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. We don't know. But the most important thing is to continue extending the truce, because extending the truce means stopping the killing.
For more on this, we're now joined by Mabrur Ahmed, who is the director of Restless Beings, an international human rights organization based in London, which focuses on supporting genocide victims and refugees. And he joins us via our video line. Ahmed, thank you so much for joining us here on the late edition. Perhaps let's start off with the latest coming out from the Middle East. Let's talk about that truce, which has now been extended.
Yeah, thank you for having me. From what we understand today, midnight, it was going to be the end of the first truce or pause, if we like to call it that. But it's been extended by another 48 hours until 7 a.m. Gaza time on Thursday morning. Much under the same sort of conditions of the truce that we've seen for the last 4 days. So the release of roughly 10 Israeli prisoners of war for around about 3 times the amount of Palestinian prisoners.
And basically, what does this mean, Ahmed, for the people of Gaza now that we've seen an extension? I mean, we saw US President Joe Biden saying that he would like to see an extension of, these humanitarian pauses.
I mean, essentially, it means 2 things. On the one hand, it gives us the opportunity and the time to get much needed humanitarian aid and assistance in. It gives people a moment to kind of catch their breath, I suppose. But on the other hand, despite what Biden may have said and the administration may have said, actually the key party here is what Israel and that regime is saying, and they're saying full throttle. They're planning to continue their assault on Gaza. And actually, I think perhaps maybe it hasn't quite hit the news headlines yet, but the IDF digital spokesperson tonight actually mentioned that some of the people who have been held hostage are being kept in Khan Yunis. And I think it's quite pertinent, the fact that they've even mentioned Khan Yunis, because we know that there is an appetite for the Israeli occupation forces to move further south and not just focus on North Gaza. I think in the next stage, if you like, we're more likely to see a broadening of their military targets and most likely a move south towards Khan Yunis, the second city of Gaza.
And, when it comes to what we can expect over the next 2 days, I mean, because of this humanitarian pause, we understand that more hostages will be released from both ends.
Yeah, I mean, like I said to you, the terms of the deal will be very similar to the deal that's been taken place for the last 4 days. So it roughly works out to be 1 Israeli prisoner of war in exchange for 3 Palestinian prisoners. So we've seen in the last 4 days around about 115 Palestinians being released from prison, mostly women and children. But also, I think, and again, quite pertinent to mention, is in the last 4 days, Israel itself has arrested more than 100 from the West Bank as well. So it's quite, it's much of the same, let's just say. On one hand, there seems to be some release for the Palestinians, but on the other hand, there seems to be more detention as well. So, the deal is such that Hamas releases an Israeli prisoner of war in exchange for 3 Palestinians. But like I said, the equation and the mathematics don't quite work because Israel continues to detain Palestinians with impunity and at will.
But what does that say then, Ahmed, when it comes to these two sides beginning to find each other? One would say that if we see an extension of this truce, surely the talks being held here seem to be somewhat, creating a space and an environment that we can see, these two warring parties come to the table and try and find a solution. But if you are saying that more people are being arrested, what does this all say?
Well, I think, when you look at international diplomacy, normally when there are soundings of a ceasefire, what that really is, or when there is even a truce like we've seen for the last few days, what that really is, it's almost like a dry run for both parties to try and find a space whereby trust can spring from. And, there is some hope because, of course, both sides have really stuck to the numbers of exchange of prisoners that they had agreed to. Also, the aid has been going in as agreed to. But ultimately, I think when you have an occupying power such as Israel, and who's quite clearly the one with the military might, saying, and I'm not saying this as rhetoric. This is almost verbatim from the defense minister, that once the ceasefire stops, the bombs will start rolling out again. When you have this type of talk, then it seems that the idea of an actual lasting and a durable, sustainable ceasefire is probably quite unlikely at the moment. You're absolutely right. We're seeing from Qatar, we're seeing from Egypt, especially, some sort of trying to create a middle ground whereby there can be further communication. But, ultimately, again, I come back to when you're looking at a durable peace and a durable ceasefire, 2 things need to happen in this particular situation. Firstly, the Israelis need to recognize that there is an occupation and that occupation must come to an end. And of course, Palestinians, if there is such a thing as a 2-state solution, the Palestinian factions must also come to the recognition of the state of Israel. Otherwise, we're going to be at this state of perpetual war. And I'm not trying to draw any moral conclusion here. I'm just explaining to you from an international diplomacy perspective that for a ceasefire to happen, both parties need to recognize the wrongs that have been committed and also look for the solutions and the roadmap for a future peace. At this moment in time, the roadmap for a future peace doesn't seem to be there, and there also doesn't seem to be much appetite to recognize the ills that both sides have caused.
Yeah, Mr. Ahmed, thank you so much for that update and your time. That is Mabrur Ahmed. He is the director of Restless Beings, an international human rights organization based in London.